Tonight, you walk through corridors where light fears to linger. The walls are lined with ashes, ashes that once were words. Beneath your feet, the Vatican's marble hums softly, as if remembering every voice it silenced. For centuries, the Church waged a quiet war, not with armies or swords, but with parchment and flame. They called it purification. They called it faith. But history remembers it differently, as the war against forbidden knowledge. Every book they burned was a battlefield. Every whisper of curiosity, a rebellion. The victims were not heretics, but ideas. Those who dared to say the universe was wider than doctrine. Tonight, we descend into the smoke and silence they left behind. Through vaults where burned pages still hum, and through catacombs where the truth learned to hide in ink. Because what the Vatican tried to erase was never sin, only knowledge too bright to kneel. Welcome to Vatican Mysteries for Sleep, where history dreams in whispers and truth still glows beneath the ash. You begin in silence, the kind of silence that follows confession. The air smells of dust and candle wax. Around you, rows of shelves stretch like ribs of a sleeping giant, but most are empty, ghosts of books that once lived here. Their absence is the loudest sound of all. Centuries ago, this was the heart of the Church's hidden war, a war not fought with swords, but with pages. The enemy? Words. Words that questioned, words that remembered, words that refused to kneel. The Vatican called it purification. Historians call it censorship. But those who saw it, the scribes, the monks, the scholars, called it what it was, erasure. Whole worlds vanished in those fires. Libraries turned to smoke. Languages died without witnesses. Yet some resisted. Hidden in catacombs and cloisters, they copied the forbidden texts by moonlight, sealing them into walls, burying them in tombs, whispering them into memory. You walk among their ghosts now, the keepers of knowledge, the silent rebels of faith. Each step you take echoes their defiance. Each breath tastes of the past they refuse to surrender. This is not the story of the Church you learned. It is the story beneath the altar, the one written in secret ink, between sermons and flames. It is a record of what was buried so belief could reign. And as you listen, you'll realize something unsettling. They didn't burn the truth. They only taught the world to fear it. You stand in a square that no longer belongs to time. The stones beneath your feet are slick with the memory of rain, and the air smells faintly of iron and smoke. Around you, a crowd has gathered, faces pale in the glow of torches. They murmur prayers, but their eyes betray curiosity, the same hunger that built temples and burned them down. Before you stands the pyre. It is tall, built of wood and bound manuscripts. Pages flutter in the wind like pale wings. Some still bear ink wet enough to glisten. Monks move among the crowd, carrying baskets filled with books stripped from shelves, works of medicine, philosophy, astronomy. To the Church, they are poison. To the world, they are breath. A priest steps forward, his robe heavy with gold thread. He raises a parchment and reads the decree. His voice trembles slightly, not from fear, but from conviction. He speaks of purity, of the danger of heretical words, of minds turned from God by curiosity. You listen, but the words sound less like faith and more like control, disguised as salvation. When the torch is lowered, the fire does not roar, it sighs. It licks the pages as if reluctant to destroy them. Smoke curls upward, carrying letters into the night. You watch them rise, fragments of Latin and Greek dissolving into the stars. Somewhere in that smoke, knowledge escapes, small, unseen, but alive. Beside you, a child asks her mother why they burn books if God made words. The mother hushes her, fear wrapping around her throat like a rosary. You catch the girl's gaze. She looks at you as if waiting for an answer, You cannot give. The fire grows. Its light reflects in the windows of nearby churches, dancing against icons of saints. Their painted eyes seem to flicker, pity or judgment, you cannot tell. A gust of wind scatters ash into the crowd. The people flinch, as though the dust might brand them guilty by proximity. You step closer to the pyre. The heat presses against your skin. You can almost hear the words inside the flames. Whispers in tongues older than Rome. The pages crackle, and for an instant you think you see shapes in the fire. Letters forming, collapsing, reforming again. It feels as if the books are still trying to speak even as they die. One man stands apart from the crowd. His robes are plain, his hands ink-stained. You recognize him. A scribe, perhaps one of those whose copies now burn. His eyes are steady, fixed not on the fire, but on the smoke. They think they are cleansing, he murmurs. But they are only changing the shape of memory. He turns to you, eyes dark and calm. Every fire is a translation, he says softly. What burns here will appear elsewhere, disguised, hidden, but alive. Knowledge does not die. It reincarnates. You want to ask who he is, but he is already gone, swallowed by the crowd. As the fire reaches its peak, the priest lifts his hands to heaven. The heresy is ended, he proclaims. The crowd responds, Amen. But beneath the chant, you hear another sound, a faint hum, like ink drying, like breath held between pages. It is the sound of resistance, of thought refusing to vanish. You look down. A fragment of parchment has landed near your feet, edges singed, but words intact. You pick it up. The ink glows faintly in the firelight. The text reads, Veritas non ardet. Truth does not burn. The flames begin to fade. The ashes settle like snow. The crowd disperses, leaving only smoke and silence. But the silence feels different now, thicker, almost sentient. You stand alone in the square, holding the fragment like a relic. When the last ember dies, you realize the truth. This was not the first fire. It was only the first one recorded. The world has always burned its own reflections, afraid of what they might reveal. You walk away through the empty streets. Behind you, the pyre smolders quietly. Somewhere, deep beneath the marble of the city, a vault trembles, as if waking from sleep. The night exhales. The air tastes of ash and memory. And you understand, with sudden clarity, that every era begins with a book burning. You wake to the sound of quills scratching in the dark. At first you think it is rain against stone. But then you hear rhythm, steady, deliberate, like the heartbeat of a secret. The air is cold and smells of wax and ink. You are deep inside a monastery, beneath the surface of a mountain where the sun never reaches. Candles burn low along the walls, their flames soft as breath. Between them, rows of wooden desks stretch into shadow. Figures sit bent over parchment, their hoods drawn low. They move in silence, except for that whispering sound, quill against page, history against forgetting. You walk among them, careful not to disturb the fragile peace. Each monk writes alone, but their hands move as if guided by the same invisible pulse. You glance at one page, Greek symbols intertwined with Latin, margins filled with strange circles and stars. The text is forbidden. You recognize it instantly. The Corpus Hermeticum, the ancient writings of Hermes Trismegistus, burned by decree centuries ago. Yet here it is, alive beneath candlelight. A voice whispers from behind you. Do not stare too long. The ink remembers the eyes that see it. You turn. A monk stands close, his face half hidden in shadow. His hands are stained black, his eyes glinting like oil. You're not one of us, he says quietly, but you carry the same hunger. He leads you deeper into the scriptorium, past rows of copying desks. At the far wall stands a door carved from cedar, marked with a spiral, the sign of the silent order. He unlocks it with a key shaped like a feather. This is where we keep what must not exist, he whispers. Inside, the air hums faintly, vibrating through your chest. Shelves line the walls, filled with scrolls wrapped in linen and sealed with wax. The monk lights another candle, and the light reveals strange symbols drawn across the stone, part prayer, part equation. We copy by moonlight, he says. We hide by silence. The church thinks we are its loyal hands, preserving Holy Scripture, but we are preserving something older. He unrolls a parchment. The writing is beautiful, flowing like water. This, he says, is the gospel of the twin, the words of Thomas. They call it heresy, but it is only a mirror. You touch the edge of the parchment. It feels warm, alive, almost pulsing. Why risk your life for this? You ask. He smiles faintly. Because silence is heavier than sin. From somewhere above, a bell tolls once. The monks pause, all quills frozen in air. The sound lingers, vibrating through the stone. When it fades, they resume, their movements faster now, as if time itself were closing in. You notice their hands shaking, eyes weary. Do you ever rest? You ask. Rest is for those who forget, the monk replies. We remember. He gestures toward a table where scraps of parchment lie scattered. Every fire above sends us work below. What they burn, we rewrite. What they erase, we recite until it exists again. You pick up one of the scraps. The ink glows faintly in candlelight. Familiar words from a burned philosopher. To know the world is to know oneself. The monk lowers his voice. Sometimes we wonder if God watches us write, or if he writes through us, trying to save his own forgotten name. His words settle into you like dust in old stone. Hours pass, or maybe centuries. The candles melt down to stubs. You hear the scratching again, faster, desperate. Then a sudden sound, a knock, distant, echoing through the walls. The monks freeze. One extinguishes his candle. Soldiers, someone whispers. The room becomes still as death. The monk beside you presses a bundle of pages into your hands. Take this, he says. If they find us, the work must continue. Find the others. The line must not break. You hesitate. Where? He smiles sadly. Wherever there is silence. The door bursts open. Torches blaze. Voices shout. The monks scatter, parchment vanishing into sleeves, into walls, into memory. You slip into a narrow passage, lit by the faint glow of dying candles. The sound of boots follows. Iron, relentless. You run, clutching the bundle to your chest. The passage twists and narrows until it opens into a small alcove lined with stone alcoves. You press your back against the cold wall, heart pounding. Footsteps echo closer, then fade. Silence returns. You unwrap the pages. The ink is smudged but legible. The title reads, De Lumine Veritatis, On the Light of Truth. You exhale, realizing you are holding the voice of a man who once defied empires. From far below, you hear faint chanting, the monks reciting, not in fear, but in defiance. The rhythm builds, echoing through the tunnels like heartbeat and hymn combined. You understand now. This is how forbidden knowledge survives, not through rebellion, but through remembrance. You rise and move toward the tunnel's end. The candlelight fades behind you. Ahead lies only darkness, but within it you sense motion, a pulse, a breath, a promise. The ink on your fingers glows faintly. The parchment hums softly, as if alive. You whisper the words you once heard. Truth does not burn. And as you step into the dark, you swear you hear the walls whisper back. You wake to the tolling of bells. They sound wrong, too slow, too deliberate, like verdicts being read across the air. The city beyond the monastery has changed. Rome no longer hums with the quiet rhythm of faith. It beats with fear now, wrapped in parchment and sealed with wax. You walk through the narrow streets as dawn stains the horizon, a pale, uncertain gold. The markets are closed. The fountains have fallen silent. Even the pigeons seem to avoid the square ahead, where a crowd gathers around a raised platform. Upon it stands a man in robes of crimson, his face grave, his hands trembling only slightly as he holds a book higher than his own head. It is not a Bible. It is a list. He speaks without passion, each word cutting the air like a blade. By decree of His Holiness, the following works are condemned. Their authors, if living, are to be summoned. Their words, if found, are to be purged. Their memory, if cherished, is to be confessed and forgotten. You listen, though the names come like ghosts. Erasmus, Machiavelli, Bruno, Copernicus. Each name tolls like a funeral bell. You watch the scribes below him recording the decrees on parchment, their pens scratching faster than the wind can carry the ashes from yesterday's fire. The crowd shifts uneasily. Some cross themselves. Others bow their heads. No one speaks. The silence feels heavier than the smoke that once filled this place. The man in crimson closes the book with a sound that echoes too long. He sets it upon the altar beside him. You can see the title embossed in gold leaf. Index Librorum Prohibitorum, the index of forbidden books. It gleams like an idol. The bells begin again. This time they sound like applause for the unseen hand that writes the world's new commandments. You follow the procession that carries the book into the Vatican's gates. Inside, corridors echo with whispered Latin and hurried footsteps. The air is thick with ink and incense. Two scents that now mean the same thing. Control. In one chamber, scribes sit around a table, sorting manuscripts into piles. A young priest explains the method to a visiting cardinal. Each work must be examined for deviation, each thought weighed against the faith. The dangerous ones we list, the doubtful ones we bind, the loyal ones we bless. You watch as they handle the pages like surgeons, careful, precise, merciless. One man holds up a book on astronomy, written in the vernacular. "It says the stars move as if alive," he murmurs. Another replies, "Then it must die." The priest stamps it with red wax, a mark of death for paper. Through an open window you see the courtyard below, rows of carts stacked with confiscated texts. Soldiers unload them like bodies. Their spines break under weight, pages spilling like feathers. The man beside you sighs softly. He wears the simple robe of a clerk, yet his eyes burn with something unholy, compassion. "I copied some of these," he whispers, "not for rebellion, only for beauty. I never thought beauty could be a sin." He gestures to the nearest stack, where a volume bound in blue leather rests atop the heap. "That one," he says, "is a book of music. It teaches that harmony mirrors heaven." You ask, "And what did they call it?" He looks away. "Sorcery." You walk deeper into the archive halls. Candles flicker against frescoes of saints holding books, their painted faces serene. But beneath their hands, the pages are blank. You hear a sound, a faint rustle. Following it, you find a narrow corridor hidden behind a tapestry. Inside, a monk kneels over a small table, his quill trembling as he copies a list onto parchment. The light falls on his face, revealing exhaustion carved deep into his skin. He doesn't startle when he sees you. "You came late," he says softly. "They already sealed the first index." "What happens now?" you ask. He dips his quill into ink blacker than night. Now every book must choose its disguise. He slides a parchment toward you. It is filled with names crossed out and rewritten under saints' titles. Philosophy will wear the mask of theology. Science will dress as devotion. The truth will learn to whisper. You study his hands, calloused, ink-stained, steady despite everything. "You sound unafraid," you tell him. He smiles faintly. "Fear is a fire. We learn to write in smoke." From the corridor behind you, footsteps echo, voices, stern, Commanding, the monk rolls the parchment and hides it in a hollow between stones. "If they find me," he says, "the list lives. If they don't, it waits." He gestures toward the doorway. "Go. Tell whoever still listens that a list can kill 1,000 voices, but it can also remember them." You leave before the guards arrive. Outside, Rome breathes again, but not freely. The bells toll the hours of obedience. And as you walk past the closed shops and silent scholars, you realize the war has changed. Fire destroys, but ink endures. The church has learned that silence written is silence multiplied. When you glance back, you see the Vatican rising like a mountain of stone and shadow. Somewhere within its heart, the first index gleams behind locked doors, a book of death pretending to guard life. You whisper to the air, "Truth does not burn." The air answers, faint and hollow, but it can be bound. You descend through a corridor lit only by memory. The walls are close, the air damp, the stones slick beneath your hands. You have followed the whisper of rumor here, a place said to exist beneath the Vatican, older than its cathedrals, deeper than its foundations. A vault where the condemned books were not destroyed, only buried alive. The staircase spirals endlessly downward. Each step echoes like a question you were never meant to ask. When you finally reach the bottom, you find a door of iron set into the wall. It bears no lock, only a seal shaped like an eye. You press your hand against it. The metal is cold, but it yields, sighing open as if relieved to be remembered. The room beyond is vast. Candles burn in glass globes that hang from the ceiling like trapped moons. Their light moves over shelves carved directly into stone, shelves that breathe dust, centuries old. You stand at the threshold of the forbidden library. The silence here is not absence. It is presence, alive, listening. You can feel it against your skin, a low hum like a heartbeat slowed by time. The books themselves seem to exhale softly, their bindings creaking as though waking from long sleep. You take a step forward. The floor vibrates faintly beneath your weight. The air smells of parchment and myrrh. On the first shelf, the titles are in languages half forgotten. Greek, Coptic, Arabic, Latin. Some have no writing at all, only symbols, spirals, eyes, stars. You trace one with your finger, and the leather feels warm, pulsing faintly like flesh. A whisper brushes your ear. You turn, but the chamber is empty. The sound comes again, soft, rhythmic, like breath formed into words. You realize it is not a voice, but many, hundreds, maybe thousands, layered so closely they form a single tone. The books are speaking. You kneel and listen. The sound grows clearer, a cadence too strange to be language, yet too deliberate to be noise. Each syllable hums through the air and into your bones. It feels as though the knowledge trapped here is trying to escape through you. A candle flickers. The light bends, revealing movement in the corner of the room, a shadow, robed and slow. You stiffen, but it raises a hand in greeting. "Do not be afraid," the figure says. The voice is calm, low, threaded with dust. Few find this place, unless the silence calls them. You ask, "Who are you?" "The keeper," the figure replies. "Once, we were many. Now, I am the last." He steps into the light. His face is lined like the pages of an old book, his eyes pale as parchment. "You've come to see what they buried." He gestures for you to follow. You walk among the shelves as he speaks. "When the fires began, some of us carried what we could beneath the catacombs. We built this library to protect the condemned. But the church discovered even secrets must be catalogued. They sent us here to guard what we should have burned." He runs his hand along a spine so worn the title has vanished. "The irony," he says, "is that obedience preserved more heresy than rebellion ever did." You ask him how long he's been here. He laughs quietly. Time does not keep count beneath silence. He stops before a heavy cabinet bound with chains. "These," he says, "are the books the church could not destroy because it needed them." He unlocks the door. Inside are manuscripts glimmering faintly with metallic ink. They contain formulas, ritual, geometry, creation, too close to divine mechanics to be forgotten, too dangerous to be known. He closes the cabinet again. "They call it heresy," he murmurs, "but I call it memory." You move through aisles that seem to stretch forever. Some books glow faintly as you pass, their pages trembling. Others remain still, waiting. You feel their attention, a vast, patient consciousness woven from centuries of thought. "Does anyone read them?" you ask. The keeper smiles faintly. "The books read themselves. We are only echoes to them now." You reach a central chamber. The ceiling arches high, painted not with saints, but with constellations. At the room's center stands a table carved from black marble. Upon it rests a single tome, open, its pages blank. The keeper gestures toward it. This one writes only in the presence of witnesses. You step closer. The parchment ripples like water. Words appear, faint as breath. You read them aloud. All silence remembers. The letters fade. The keeper bows his head. The library knows you now. A tremor passes through the floor. Dust falls like snow. The candles flicker wildly. The keeper looks toward the ceiling, eyes wide. "They've heard us," he whispers. "Who?" "The ones above." You hear footsteps echoing through the stairwell, the sound of metal on stone, sharp and hurried. The keeper presses a small object into your hand. It is a shard of crystal etched with the same eye that marked the door. "Take this," he says. "It remembers the way back. When you return, the silence will open." He moves toward the shelves, his voice calm, though the noise above grows louder. "If they ask what you saw," he says, "tell them only this: the books are sleeping." Then he turns to the nearest flame and blows it out. Darkness folds around him like cloth. You back away, clutching the crystal. The air hums louder now, fear, memory, knowledge awakening all at once. You run through the corridors, the footsteps draw near. Behind you, the library's whispers swell into song, soft, endless, defiant. When you reach the stairwell, the iron door closes on its own, sealing with a hiss. The sound fades. You climb toward the surface, lungs burning, mind ringing with words you cannot unhear. Above, the bells begin again, tolling the hour as if nothing beneath had ever stirred. But you know that under the Vatican's perfect floors, 1,000 forbidden books breathe together, dreaming of light. And somewhere in that darkness, a keeper's voice murmurs to the pages, teaching them to wait for you to return. You stand on a terrace overlooking the city, the air thick with the smell of rain and ink. The stars above Rome shimmer faintly, half veiled by mist. Somewhere, a bell marks the hour past midnight. It feels like the world itself is holding its breath. Beside you stands a man with eyes that see farther than the sky. His hands are steady, though the church has already declared them dangerous. He speaks softly, as if not to wake the heavens he studies. "They say God moves the sun around the earth," he murmurs. "But when I watch, I see the opposite. It is we who circle him." You look through his telescope, a slender brass instrument aimed toward Jupiter. The glass catches the faint light of distant moons, tiny orbs moving in perfect silence. You feel dizzy. The earth beneath your feet suddenly seems to drift, unanchored, floating in invisible motion. He smiles faintly at your reaction. "Do you feel it?" he asks. "That shiver beneath your bones. That's the truth. It doesn't shout, it only turns." The door behind you opens. A messenger appears, pale and breathless, holding a sealed parchment. Galileo breaks the seal. The wax bears the mark of the Vatican. He reads, and his face does not change. but his hands tighten on the page. "They have summoned me," he says. "To bless your discovery," you ask. He shakes his head. "To measure my faith." You follow him through narrow streets the next morning. The city wakes slowly, its towers rising like prayers against the fog. People watch as he passes, some with reverence, some with fear. They know what happens to men who see too much. Inside the holy office, the air is cold. The walls are white and bare. A long table stretches before him, behind which sit men in black robes. Their faces are calm, polished, unreadable. The Inquisitor speaks with the authority of marble. "You claim," he begins, "that the earth moves around the sun." "I claim nothing," Galileo answers. "I observe." "You defy Scripture," the Inquisitor replies. "I illuminate it," Galileo says. His voice is quiet, but it cuts through the air like light through glass. "If God wrote the universe, then to read it cannot be sin." The Inquisitor's lips tighten. "The Church does not burn men for their curiosity," he says, "only for their pride." A murmur moves through the room, soft, dangerous. Galileo stands still, his hands clasped. You can see sweat glistening on his forehead, but his gaze remains fixed on the window where sunlight slants across the floor. "If it is pride," he says slowly, "then it is the same pride that placed the stars there." They silence him. The hearing continues for hours, filled with questions that sound like traps. He answers each one with patience, with reason, with a faith too vast for dogma. But reason is a fragile thing in a room full of power. By dusk, the verdict is ready. They declare his teachings vehemently suspected of heresy. He must recant. The words are written before they are spoken. The ink has already dried. That night, you sit beside him in his cell. The window is small, showing only a sliver of moonlight. He stares through it, his expression unreadable. "They cannot stop the earth from moving," he says quietly, "only from being spoken of." You ask him why he does not fight, why he agrees to sign their paper. He turns to you with tired eyes. "Because silence can live longer than flame. They will burn the words, but they cannot unsee what they have seen. Truth moves even when it kneels." He dips his quill into ink and signs his name. Each stroke feels like a wound. When he is done, he sits back and whispers something under his breath. You lean closer. "And yet," he says, "it moves." The guards lead him away the next morning, exiled to his villa near Florence. You follow him there years later. He is older now, blind, but his hands still trace invisible patterns in the air. "I can no longer see the stars," he says, "but I remember where they are." He turns toward you, his sightless eyes shining faintly. "The Church believes it silenced me, but it only made my words travel faster. The truth does not need light to find its way." You walk outside, into the soft Tuscan dawn. The world turns, slow and unseen. The sun rises exactly where he said it would, and somewhere in the Vatican, behind locked doors, a copy of Dialogue Concerning the Two Chief World Systems rests hidden on a forbidden shelf, its ink alive, its orbit unbroken. The square is crowded again. The same stones that once held books now cradle a man. He stands barefoot on a wooden platform, his robes torn. His eyes are alight with something too fierce to name. Giordano Bruno, philosopher, astronomer, heretic. He has been called all three, though only one will be remembered by those who light the fire. You can feel the city holding its breath. Rome watches as the guards tie his hands behind his back. They offer him a crucifix. He shakes his head. "You fear the truth because it has no walls," he says softly. The priest beside him mutters a prayer, voice trembling. The words fall like ashes before they even reach the sky. You step closer, close enough to see the calm on Bruno's face. There is no terror there, only the serene exhaustion of a man who has argued with the universe and found it patient. The Inquisitor reads the sentence aloud. His voice wavers slightly when he reaches the word execution. Perhaps even he feels the dissonance, punishing light with darkness, thought with fire. Bruno closes his eyes. "You burn me," he says, "but you cannot destroy what I have seen." The torch descends. The straw catches quickly. The flames rise like wings. The crowd murmurs prayers. Some weep. Others stare as though watching a comet fall to earth. The smoke twists upward, black and silver, carrying his last breath into the cold February sky. You cannot look away. The fire does not consume him at once. It dances around him, licking the air, uncertain. For a moment, he seems to stand within it, untouched. His silhouette luminous, his voice echoing even as the wind steals it. "There are infinite worlds," he says, "and all are filled with life." The guards avert their eyes. The inquisitors turn away. The people cross themselves, afraid of what the words might awaken. When it is over, the ashes drift into the square. They cling to your skin, warm still, like fragments of something divine. That night, you walk the streets alone. The air smells of smoke and memory. Rome is quiet, but the stars above blaze brighter than you have ever seen them. It feels as though the sky itself mourns. You find yourself standing before the Vatican gates. The guards do not see you. Inside, behind layers of stone and silence, men write reports that call this justice. They record his words as blasphemy, his death as purification. You press your hand to the iron bars and whisper, "You burned a man, not a mistake." A soft voice answers from the dark beside you. It is an old woman, her face hidden beneath a shawl. "They burn what they cannot possess," she says. "But fire is a poor jailer." She drops a small pouch into your hand. Inside is a folded scrap of parchment. You open it and find words written in hurried Latin. "The stars have no church." You look up, but she has vanished. Days pass. Rome forgets. The ashes are swept away, the platform dismantled. The inquisitors return to prayer. But the silence that follows feels wrong, stretched too thin. The air hums faintly, as if echoing something unseen. You travel north, to a monastery on the edge of the Alps. There, in a small hidden chamber, a young monk shows you a manuscript written in Bruno's hand. "He sent it before the trial," the monk whispers. "We hid it here. He called it the Mirror of Worlds." You read the pages by candlelight. His words shimmer with something more than defiance. They pulse with wonder. He speaks of stars as living things, of souls that migrate between suns, of a universe so vast that even God must wonder to know it. When you finish, the monk asks, "Do you believe him?" You close the book slowly. "I believe he saw farther than they allowed him to." Outside, snow begins to fall. The flakes settle softly on the window ledge, glowing faintly in the candlelight. You think of the fire in Rome, of the smoke rising like prayer. You realize that both snow and flame fall the same way, downward, toward memory. Years later, when the Vatican finally allows Galileo's books to return to its shelves, Bruno's name remains cursed. But his ideas, like sparks, find new air. The forbidden universe expands again, unseen but unstoppable. You return to the Campo dei Fiori. The square is quiet, the stones clean. At its center stands a statue, a man in a hood, eyes hidden, face calm. Beneath it, an inscription carved in Latin, "To Bruno, from the free thinkers of the world he foresaw." You stand there as night falls. The stars burn above, countless and patient. Somewhere, in the rhythm of their light, you feel the pulse of his words still moving. The universe turns. Rome sleeps. and the fire that once killed him burns quietly now inside every question, every whisper, every human gaze lifted toward the sky. You enter through a door that should not exist. It is carved into the side of a crumbling chapel, half swallowed by ivy, its hinges rusted but still breathing. The air beyond it is thick, ancient, filled with the dust of forgotten prayers. You step through, and the light dims to a pulse of gold and shadow. The chamber smells of ink and age. Tables stand beneath shrouds of linen. Wax has melted down to puddles. You hear the slow, careful rustle of parchment being unrolled. At first, you think you are alone, but then a voice, a woman's, low and steady, emerges from the dark. "Do not speak," she says. "The walls have ears older than the church." She moves into the faint circle of candlelight. Her robes are plain, her hands ink-stained. A librarian, you realize, or perhaps something older. She lifts a piece of parchment, its edges burned, its letters written in red pigment that gleams like dried blood. "What you see," she whispers, "is one of the forbidden ones, the Gospel according to Mary." You draw closer. The text glows faintly as she traces each line. "It speaks of a teacher who taught not only the 12, she says, but the one who understood." Her eyes glint. A woman. You feel the air shift. The candles tremble as though they, too, are listening. "They called her blasphemy," the librarian continues. "They said her gospel was dust, her name a lie. But dust remembers. It carries echoes." She leads you deeper into the vault, past shelves lined with fragments, scraps of Coptic, Greek, Aramaic. "When they burned her words," she says, "they thought they erased her voice. But fire is a poor editor. The smoke carried her farther than parchment ever could." She stops before a locked cabinet. From her sleeve, she pulls a small bronze key shaped like a feather. The lock opens with a sigh. Inside lie 3 manuscripts bound in skin that gleams like gold under candlelight. "These," she says, "are the hidden Gospels. Thomas, Judas, Mary. Each one tells the same story differently. That was their crime." You pick one up carefully. The Gospel of Thomas. Its pages are thin, translucent. You read the first lines aloud. "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you." The words hang in the air like smoke. The librarian nods. "It does not speak of sin. It speaks of knowing, of finding God not in heaven, but within. And that frightened them more than any devil." She moves to another manuscript, the Gospel of Judas. "Here," she says, "the traitor is the only one who understood the sacrifice. The betrayer becomes the vessel." Imagine what that means to a church built on obedience. You feel the room darken. The air hums faintly, as if the parchment itself remembers the weight of accusation. "Why keep them here?" you ask. "Why not destroy them like the rest?" She looks toward the ceiling, where faint cracks reveal the foundations of the Vatican above. Because knowledge cannot be killed, it can only be hidden. The church learnt this early, so they built tombs for truth and called them archives. You run your fingers over the pages. The ink is dry but alive. It pulses faintly, as if the words are breathing through time. "These texts," she says softly, "speak of the divine in human form. They say the kingdom is not above, but around us. They say light hides in flesh, that faith is not obedience, but remembrance. For that, they burned them." A faint rumble echoes through the stone. The librarian stiffens. "They are searching again," she whispers, "the archivists of purity. They think these rooms were sealed centuries ago." She hands you the Gospel of Mary. "Take it," she says. "If it is found, it will die again." You hesitate. "Where would I take it?" She smiles faintly. to anyone who still listens when silence speaks. The rumble grows louder. Dust falls from the ceiling. Somewhere above, boots strike marble. She blows out the candles. Darkness folds over you both like a shroud. "Go," she whispers. "The Gospels have wandered before. They know the way." You move through corridors that twist like veins, guided only by the faint glow of the manuscript in your hands. Behind you, you hear voices. Latin prayers turned into weapons. You find a door half buried in stone. It yields when you press your shoulder against it. The night air rushes in, cold, damp, free. You run until the bells fade behind you. When you stop, you are alone beneath the Roman sky. The stars seem to pulse in rhythm with your heartbeat. You open the manuscript. The ink gleams faintly in moonlight. And for an instant, you see not letters but constellations. Each word a star, each line a path. You understand then. The Gospels were never lost. They were waiting for eyes unafraid of light. You whisper the first line again. "If you bring forth what is within you." And the night answers back with wind that sounds like memory. The Vatican sleeps. Above, the domes shimmer under moonlight, serene, untouchable. But beneath the marble floors, someone is awake. You descend the hidden stair, your footsteps swallowed by silence. The air thickens with the scent of dust and oil. The deeper you go, the more it feels like stepping inside a living organism, a body that breathes in secrets and exhales doctrine. At the bottom, a single lamp burns. Its light falls upon a desk buried beneath mountains of parchment. A man sits there, his back bent, his quill scratching softly. He does not look up when you enter. "You've come late," he says, his voice calm, almost kind. "But time moves differently here." You step closer. His robe is simple. His hands tremble with age. Yet his eyes, when he finally turns to meet yours, are sharp and alert. "I am the last archivist," he says. "When the others fled or repented, I stayed." He gestures toward the shelves behind him. They stretch into the dark like corridors of bone. Everything forbidden ends up here. Not destroyed, only misfiled. They tell the world the books were burned. In truth, they were misplaced by design. You look around. The shelves hold impossible things. Alchemical diagrams tucked between prayer books, maps of the stars drawn beside hymns. Each object hums faintly, as if alive. "You kept them?" you ask. He smiles faintly. "Someone had to. Knowledge has memory. It grieves when it's forgotten. I only give it shelter." He rises slowly and leads you deeper into the chamber. His lamp casts long shadows against the stone. "Do you know what they call this place?" he asks. You shake your head. "The limbus librorum," he says. "The library of the in-between, neither blessed nor condemned. Here dwell the ideas too beautiful to destroy and too dangerous to speak." He stops before a small cabinet bound in copper wire. "Inside," he says, "is what they most fear, records of those who remembered differently." He opens it. Inside lies a book so old it seems woven from smoke. The title, faint and fragile, reads Codex Resonare. "It is said," the archivist whispers, "that this book hums when read aloud, that it contains the echoes of every word the church erased, each syllable a ghost of language itself." You touch the cover. It vibrates faintly under your hand. He watches you. They thought silence was erasure, but silence is only storage. He sets the book aside and walks to a nearby wall, where a small slit of light pierces the stone. "I write letters in the margins of their own decrees," he says. "Tiny messages, invisible under the right light. One day, perhaps, a curious scholar will find them." "What do you write?" you ask. He smiles sadly. Truth survives in breath. His lamp flickers. The air grows heavier. You hear distant footsteps echoing through the tunnels. The archivist sighs. They come sometimes to inspect, to ensure the fires remain metaphorical. He moves to the desk, quickly covering the Codex Resonare with blank parchment. If they ask, he says, "You are a novice, sent for inventory." The footsteps grow louder, then fade again, swallowed by the labyrinth above. He sits once more, exhausted. "Every century, the church declares a new purge," he murmurs. "And every century we hide a few more words. It is a ritual of balance. They burn in daylight, and we write in shadow." You notice a small, sealed letter on the desk. The wax bears a symbol you've seen before, the eye from the library beneath silence. "You know the keeper," you say. He nods. We exchange silence. He guards the breath of the books. I guard their memory. You ask if he believes the church will ever allow these works to live again. He laughs softly. They already live. Every sermon carries fragments of what was once forbidden. Every hymn borrows a phrase from something burned. The church doesn't even know it sings its own heresies. He hands you a page torn from an old ledger. On it, written in his delicate script, are names: Plato, Hypatia, Hermes, Sappho, Bruno, Mary. "These are the saints of memory," he says. "Not canonized, but resurrected in the margins." You sit with him for what feels like hours, listening to the scratching of his quill. The sound is rhythmic, meditative, like prayer rendered in ink. Finally, he speaks again. "When I die," he says, "they will seal this place. They think it will end here. But I have left the doors open in ways they cannot see." He gestures toward the shelves. "Every book is a key. Every reader, a door. Once you know how to listen, silence will lead you back." He smiles faintly, his eyes dimming but peaceful. "If anyone ever asks what I believed, tell them I believed that words are sacred because they breathe. Even lies are proof that truth once existed." The lamp burns lower. You realize his breathing has slowed. His hand rests lightly on the parchment, ink still wet from his last line. You look down and read it. Remember not the fire, but the breath that survived it. You whisper his words aloud, and the air shivers. Around you, the shelves creak softly, as if exhaling. Somewhere deep in the darkness, a faint hum begins, low and steady, the sound of ink remembering its purpose. You leave quietly, closing the door behind you. Above ground, the bells toll the dawn. The city awakens to prayers and pigeons, to smoke and incense. No one knows that below their feet, a man has died writing life back into silence. You hold his final words close. They vibrate through your chest like heartbeat and hymn combined. Truth survives in breath, and as the morning sun spills across the Vatican's marble, you swear you can still hear the whisper of his quill, writing on air, forever. You walk into the desert as dawn bleeds over the horizon. The sand stretches endless and indifferent, but beneath it lies the corpse of a city that once glowed brighter than Rome, brighter than Babylon, Alexandria, the library that dreamed of knowing the mind of God. The wind carries whispers, faint, broken syllables that sound almost like pages turning. You follow them through the dunes until stone appears, half buried and patient. Columns fractured by time, their carvings smoothed by centuries of grief. The ruins breathe, faintly, as if still alive. The world remembers the burning of Alexandria as a single night. But that's a lie told by those who fear slow death. It did not burn once. It burned for centuries. 1,000 small betrayals, 1,000 small silences. Every emperor, every bishop, every conqueror took a piece of it away, until knowledge itself became a shadow wandering the world. You step over fallen stone, past pillars blackened by old fire. Beneath your feet, shards of clay tablets glitter like bone. The air smells faintly of salt and ink. In the distance, a lone figure kneels before the ruins of a doorway. You approach. It is a woman. her hair grey, her hands resting gently on the stone. When she speaks, her voice sounds older than the sand. "You're late," she says. You kneel beside her. "Who are you?" She smiles faintly. "A librarian, or what's left of one. We never really die, you know. We just change shelves." She traces a line along the wall, revealing faint etchings, letters in Greek, almost erased. "These were once names," she says, "of philosophers, poets, scientists. They believed the universe could be read like a book." She turns to you. "But Rome believed only priests should read." The silence stretches, heavy as smoke. "Why did they burn it?" you ask. Her eyes glint. "Because light is unbearable when it comes from too many directions. The church wanted one sun, one truth. Alexandria was a constellation." She stands, leading you deeper into the ruins. "They say Caesar's fire started it. Others blame Theophilus or the Muslim conquerors after. But the truth is simpler. Every age finds a reason to destroy what it does not understand." You descend into what once was the library's lower vaults. The air grows cooler, thicker. Water drips from the ceiling. You see alcoves carved into the walls, each once filled with scrolls. Now, only ashes remain. The woman lights a small oil lamp. The glow reveals faint inscriptions, lines from lost works. Geometry is the language of the divine. The stars are the letters of the soul. "These were written by minds who saw the world as one great pattern," she says. "They did not worship gods. They studied the symmetry that gods left behind." You touch one of the walls. It feels warm, pulsing faintly. You realize the heat is not from the lamp, but from something beneath the stone, perhaps the earth itself, remembering. She kneels beside a half-buried urn. "Hypatia taught here," she whispers. "She believed reason was prayer. They tore her apart for that." You close your eyes, imagining it. The scholar walking through the streets, scrolls clutched in her hands, her students watching as the mob descended. The sound of parchment tearing, the silence that followed. "She was the last librarian of Alexandria," the woman says softly. "After her, the stars dimmed. The Vatican called her a witch. The priests said her death was purification." You ask, "And yet you remember her." "I am her echo," she replies simply. "Every librarian who hides a forbidden book becomes her shadow." The lamp flickers. Dust falls like snow. Somewhere deep within the ruins, you hear a faint hum, the same vibration you felt beneath the Vatican. The same tone whispered in every archive, every vault, every forgotten library. You look around and see that the walls shimmer faintly. The ash on the floor stirs. Letters form, then vanish. The ruins are trying to speak. The woman's face glows softly in the lamplight. "The books never died," she says. "They sank into the earth. Their ink dissolved into the water. Their words became salt. Every time the sea touches the shore, a sentence is whispered back into the world." You kneel beside her as she places her hand on the stone. "Listen," she says. And you do. You hear faint voices, Greek, Coptic, Hebrew, Latin, all blending into a single murmur, like a heartbeat made of language. "These are the ghosts of thought," she murmurs. "They haunt us until we remember." The lamp goes out. For a moment, there is only darkness, vast and infinite. When you open your eyes, the woman is gone. Only her footprints remain, leading deeper into the ruins. You follow them, but they end at a wall. You press your hand to the stone. It is warm, pulsing still. You whisper the word, Hypatia. The wall exhales. Dust swirls upward, glowing faintly in the dim light that filters from above. And for a brief moment, the air fills with the scent of ink and sea. When you step outside, the sun has risen fully. The ruins shimmer in gold. From afar, they look less like decay and more like memory taking form. You realize then that Alexandria never burned. It only scattered into every library, every classroom, every mind that asks why. The Vatican burned the building, but the light escaped through the cracks, and it still moves, quietly, eternally, beneath the skin of the world. The parchment is damp when you touch it, the ink dark as blood. The scribe bends over it, quill trembling. The candle beside him burns low, dripping wax like tears onto the desk. You are in a monastery again, though this one feels different. The air is heavy, thick with fear. Every window is shuttered, every sound swallowed. Somewhere down the hall, a monk coughs, a hollow, human reminder that flesh is still here, fragile and breakable. The scribe looks up briefly. His face is gaunt, his eyes fever bright. "You shouldn't be here," he whispers. "If they find you, they'll think you're one of us." "One of who?" you ask. He dips his quill again. "The ones who write what should not exist." The words make your skin prickle. You glance at his parchment. It is a psalm, familiar almost, but beneath the Latin text runs a faint second layer, written in a different hand, smaller, sharper, hidden between the lines. You lean closer. The letters form a second message, equations, symbols, fragments of another tongue. He catches your look and smiles weakly. That's where the truth hides, between the prayers. He writes faster now, whispering the words as he does. You can hear both voices, the surface hymn and the buried language beneath it. The two merge, forming a rhythm that feels alive. "I was taught to copy scripture," he says, "but the words changed when I prayed too long. The letters began to move, to rearrange. I thought it was madness. Then I realized it was memory. The ink remembers what we forget." He dips the quill again, this time into a small vial that gleams red in the candlelight. "It's not ink," he says. "It's blood mixed with ash, from the books they burned." He holds it up for you to see. It catches the light like a ruby, pulsing faintly. "The fire purified nothing," he murmurs. "It only made the words more eager to return." You feel the air vibrate. The parchment hums softly beneath his hand. "They think they killed the heretics," he says, "but their words grow through us now. Every monk who writes long enough begins to hear the echo." He lifts the page. The Latin psalm glows faintly, the hidden text pulsing beneath it like a heartbeat under skin. "It's alive," he whispers. "Every line. It remembers the hands that wrote it, the breath that spoke it. Scripture is a body. Heresy is its blood." You hear footsteps outside. He freezes. "They're coming," he says. "Hide this." He tears the page and presses it into your hands. The ink burns faintly against your skin, seeping warmth. The door opens. 2 monks enter, their faces pale, their eyes sharp with suspicion. "Brother Matthias," one says, "the abbot requests your work." The scribe bows his head. "It's not ready." They step closer. He insists. Their voices are polite, but their tone carries the weight of command. Matthias hesitates, then hands them a bundle of blank parchment. They take it, glance at you once, and leave. When the door closes, he exhales, shaking. They don't know the real pages are underneath. I write the prayers they expect, and the truth in their shadows. You unfold the fragment he gave you. The letters shimmer faintly in the candlelight. The hidden text begins to rearrange itself, lines folding into new symbols, like a living equation. "What does it mean?" you ask. He smiles faintly. "It means the truth has learned disguise." He returns to his desk, his hands steady now. "Every generation needs a heretic," he says. "Someone to remind the world that silence is not faith." He writes again. The sound of the quill becomes rhythmic, hypnotic. You close your eyes and listen. Beneath the scratching of ink, you hear another sound, a low, resonant hum, like the earth itself breathing. He leans close and whispers, "Do you know why they fear ink?" You shake your head. "Because it moves," he says. "It spreads. Fire cannot stop it. Walls cannot bind it. A single drop can carry centuries." The candle flickers. Shadows crawl along the walls like written words coming to life. For a moment, the air fills with shapes, letters floating, dissolving, reforming. You see fragments of names: Hypatia, Bruno, Mary, Galileo. Their voices layered into one endless whisper. Matthias smiles faintly. They think heresy ends in flames, but it only changes its handwriting. The door opens again, too suddenly. The monks return, their eyes hard. "Brother Matthias," one says coldly, "the abbot wishes to see you now." He does not protest. He stands slowly, hands folded, his face calm. "Remember," he says to you, "the ink knows its way home." They lead him out. You wait until the footsteps fade, then unfold the parchment again. The hidden text glows brighter now, as if aware it is alone. You read the words aloud, slowly. Verbum vivit incinera. The word lives in ash. The candle burns down to its final flicker. In that moment, you see the faint outline of a figure written into the smoke, a face half-formed, smiling. It is Matthias, already immortal in his ink. When the flame dies, you sit in the dark, holding the page. The air hums softly, carrying the ghost of his quill through the silence. Outside, the bells begin to toll. Somewhere in the monastery above, the abbot kneels in prayer, unaware that beneath his feet, heresy has already become scripture again. And as you rise to leave, you realize the truth. They can burn the book, but they cannot unwrite the hand that wrote it. The ink survives, even when the body does not. You step into the night. The wind carries the scent of smoke and salt. You look at your hands, blackened faintly, glowing where the ink touched your skin. You whisper into the wind. The word lives in ash, and the wind, warm and alive, answers back, "Amen." The night smells of copper and thunder. You walk through a narrow alley in Florence, where the stones themselves seem to remember lightning. The air hums faintly, like metal struck by invisible hammers. Somewhere ahead, a door creaks open, spilling a ribbon of golden light onto the cobblestones. A man steps out, his robe dusted with ash. His hands are stained gold at the fingertips. He glances at you once, sharply, then gestures for you to follow. You enter without speaking. Inside, the room glows with a strange warmth. Shelves line the walls, filled with jars that hold powders and liquids the color of moons and blood. A small fire burns at the center of the room, not red but blue, and its flame dances without sound. The man moves with careful precision, like a priest performing a rite. "Alchemy," he says quietly, "was never about gold. It was about memory, about translating matter into meaning." He lifts a glass vial from the table and holds it to the light. Inside, something glimmers, half dust, half light. "They call it heresy," he murmurs, "because it proves that God can be written in equations." You look around. Symbols cover every surface, circles, eyes, triangles interlaced with Latin prayers. But they feel less like decoration and more like breathing. The lines seem to pulse faintly, alive with rhythm. He sees you watching. "Each mark," he says, "is a syllable of creation. When we draw, we do not summon, we remember." You ask, "Remember what?" He smiles faintly. "The language of light." He leads you to a table where an open book rests. The pages shimmer faintly, covered in a mixture of ink and metal dust. "This is the Codex Aureum," he says, "written in the tongue that bridges faith and physics. The church keeps a copy beneath St. Peter's, chained in lead, but they do not read it. They fear it sings. You touch the page. It hums softly beneath your fingertips, like a heartbeat slowed by centuries. The symbols seem to shift when you blink, as if the book is alive and restless. Alchemy was born of worship, he continues. The transmutation of matter was only half the work. The other half was transformation of self. They burned our texts because they could not stand the thought of salvation through science. He moves closer to the fire. The blue flame flickers, illuminating his face. The secret of the alchemists was not gold, it was sound. Every metal, every element has a frequency, a note. When we mix them, we compose creation. He takes a rod of iron and dips it into a flask of liquid mercury. The air vibrates faintly. They thought we were turning metal to gold, but what we were really doing was tuning matter back to the music of its birth. A sudden gust of wind bursts through the open window, scattering dust across the floor. You hear faint voices, Latin hymns twisting into strange harmonics. The fire flares brighter. He does not flinch. "Do you hear it?" he asks. You nod. The sound grows, deep and resonant. The symbols on the walls shimmer, aligning into patterns that feel both mathematical and divine. The hum fills your chest, vibrating through your bones until your breath feels like part of the rhythm. Then, as quickly as it began, the sound fades. The room returns to silence, but something in you has changed. He looks at you, eyes glinting like molten gold. "This," he says softly, "is why they feared us. Not because we defied God, but because we imitated him." He turns back to his desk and begins writing, his quill scratching fast. When the Vatican banned the alchemists, they did not destroy our language. They baptized it. They took our symbols and called them divine. The chalice, the cross, the halo, all transmutations. The church is full of alchemy, disguised as faith. You glance at the shelves again. Among the jars, you see one labeled Spiritus Metallum. Inside floats a thin strand of light, twisting slowly. He follows your gaze. "That," he says, "is the residue of a prayer written in silver." You ask, "Can you make it speak?" He laughs softly. "It already does. The world is full of prayers no one listens to anymore." A bell tolls outside, midnight. He stiffens. The guards patrol after the 12th bell. You must go. They watch for smoke, for strange lights. Alchemy is heresy now, even when it prays. You hesitate. What will you do? He smiles, weary but content. "Continue." He hands you a small glass vial. Inside is a single drop of golden liquid. "Keep this," he says. "When the church burns again, pour it on the ashes. It remembers the shape of what was lost." You step into the night. The door closes behind you, but the glow of his blue fire lingers, flickering against the cobblestones. As you walk away, the vial hums faintly in your pocket. The air feels charged, alive. You glance up. The stars seem to shimmer differently now, arranged like an equation only the sky remembers. Somewhere behind you, the alchemist whispers a prayer in a language the world forgot. The fire answers with light that bends without smoke, and for a fleeting moment you understand. The divine was never above. It was always in the matter that burns, sings, and transforms. The chapel is empty. Only dust moves through the shafts of sunlight that pierce the air like visible sound. You stand in the center, beneath a dome painted with saints, who seem to watch you not with devotion, but with curiosity. Their eyes shimmer faintly, as if something behind them is alive. A single window catches your attention. It glows brighter than the others, its glass fractured into colors so vivid they almost hum. Reds and blues tremble like breath. Gold melts into white. You take a step closer, and the light shifts across your skin, forming patterns that feel deliberate. You raise your hand. The colors ripple across it, like language. A voice speaks from behind you, soft, melodic, calm. You see it too. You turn. A figure stands at the edge of the pews, robed in white, holding a crystal prism. Their face is half hidden in shadow. The church teaches that light is the garment of God, the voice continues. But they forget that garments are woven. You watch as the figure lifts the prism to the sunbeam. The light refracts, scattering across the walls. The colors twist and rearrange themselves until they form faint symbols, circles, lines, spirals. They move, alive. The ancients believed light was a language, the figure says. Every color a letter, every refraction a phrase. The universe speaks, but only those who've forgotten fear can hear it. You step closer. Who are you? A translator, they say simply. Once, we served the church. We mapped the geometry of angels, the resonance of prayer. Then they told us our equations blasphemed their mysteries. They lower the prism. The colors vanish. So we hid our work in stained glass. Every cathedral window in Europe is a sentence written in light. You look around, seeing it now, the patterns repeating from pane to pane. Each window speaks a fragment of something immense. What does it say? The figure smiles faintly. It says, "We are made of the same light we worship." You feel the words vibrate through you. They walk toward the altar, where a beam of sunlight cuts through a small circular opening in the ceiling. Dust dances in it like stars. When Rome fell, the monks kept the scriptures, but the light keepers, the ones who studied how radiance bends into form, were erased. Their science became miracle. Their diagrams became halos. You remember the alchemist's words, matter as memory, creation as vibration. Here, it continues, transmuted into color. They burned our writings, the translator says softly, but could not burn light. So they built temples that hid it in plain sight. The church prays beneath it every day, never realizing it kneels before what it condemned. They kneel now, tracing their finger across the mosaic floor. You realize it too, forms a pattern, a spiral leading to the beam of light at the center. Each stone, they whisper, is a line to the sun on the solstice. The ground itself is scripture. The beam shifts slightly, landing on your face. For a heartbeat, the world dissolves into color. You see visions, not images, but vibrations, numbers folding into shape, light spiraling into matter. It feels like touching the pulse of existence itself. When the vision fades, your knees are weak. The translator watches you carefully. Now you understand why they called it heresy, they say. Because once you've seen the language of light, words lose their power. They lift the prism again. Every word in the Bible is a reflection of a reflection. Light speaks more truth in silence than language can in sound. You ask, do you still believe? They pause. In God, yes, but not the God they built. I believe in the God that moves. The air hums softly as they set the prism into the beam. A column of pure white light forms, steady, perfect. Light bends to everything, they say, even darkness. It teaches us that divinity is not purity, it is adaptability. You stare into the column. Within it, you see faint shapes, letters, voices, faces, all made of the same shimmering energy. What are they? You ask. Echoes, they reply. Every prayer, every forbidden text, every burned thought still travels through the light. The church hides from it, but it sees them all. They reach into the light and pull something out, a strip of parchment glowing faintly. This is how we preserved what they tried to kill, they whisper. We encoded truth into color. Each stained window carries a line of scripture unspoken, unseen. but felt. You take the parchment. It is warm, humming faintly, the words written in pure luminescence. You cannot read it, but you can feel it, peaceful, infinite. The translator bows their head. Carry it with you, they say. The day will come when faith must return to light. You ask, and when that day comes, they smile sadly. No one will pray. They will listen. Outside, the bells toll noon. The light begins to fade. You look once more at the window. The colors shimmer, rearranging themselves into a brief, breathtaking alignment, a phrase in the lost tongue of creation. You do not understand the words, but you feel them. They vibrate through your bones, through the stone beneath your feet, through the air itself. As you step out into the sunlight, the world feels different, brighter, as though every shadow carries meaning. You realize the truth the translator meant. Faith and light are not opposites. They are reflections. And somewhere, in every cathedral, in every prayer said beneath colored glass, the lost language still hums, waiting for the eyes brave enough to see it again. The sound comes before the light. It always does. You wake to it in the middle of the night. Deep, resonant, slow. A single bell tolling somewhere beyond the city walls. The kind of sound that does not fade, but lingers, like smoke that refuses to rise. You sit up. The air smells faintly of rain and iron. In the distance, the Vatican glows dimly, its domes bathed in a silver mist. Each toll of the bell rolls across the stones, through your chest, into your bones. It feels less like hearing and more like remembering. You've heard of this bell before, the campana silens, the bell of silence. They say it rings whenever the church erases something, a decree, a name, a book, a person. No one pulls its rope. It simply tolls on its own, a mechanical ghost bound to memory. You step into the street. The sound grows louder. Windows are shuttered, lamps extinguished. Only the faint shimmer of lightning on marble guides you. The streets seem to lead you somewhere, as though the bell is pulling you forward with each note. When you reach the square, you see it, tall and black against the storm. A bell tower without inscription, without door. The rain begins to fall, soft but relentless, washing the stone clean of dust and history alike. You approach. The ground trembles faintly with each toll. The bell itself is immense, hanging like a dark heart in the open air. Its surface is engraved with thousands of names, faint, overlapping, layered over centuries until the letters form a texture instead of a language. Lightning flashes. You see movement at the base of the tower, a figure cloaked in grey, holding a book bound in iron. Their face is hidden, but their hands, pale, trembling, human, turn its pages as if in rhythm with the bell. You speak softly. Who are you? The figure doesn't look up. I am its keeper. What does it erase? You ask. Whatever Rome decides never existed, they reply. Every name struck from the record, every text purged from the index, every truth that refused to kneel. The bell tolls to mark the moment of disappearance. The sound swells again, long and sorrowful. You feel it in your ribs. The keeper closes the book. When the bell rings, the world forgets a little more. A book, a saint, a thought. Each note is a burial. You step closer. The rain runs down your face, cold and heavy. But who remembers? The keeper looks up for the first time. Their eyes are old, not ancient like stone, but ancient like silence. We do, they whisper, those who hear it and refuse to cover their ears. The bell tolls again. The ground shudders. You see for a moment faint silhouettes rising from the engraved names, faces, voices, fragments of words caught between sound and memory. The dead of knowledge made visible. They are not ghosts, the keeper says. They are echoes. Each toll releases them for a breath before they fade again. You ask what's in the book they carry. The ledger, they say. Everything the bell erases we write down. It is a mirror to their forgetting. When they burn the pages, we rewrite them from ash. Lightning again. You see faint inscriptions carved on the bell's rim. Not Latin, not Greek. Something older. You trace a line with your finger. It burns faintly beneath your touch, as if alive. What does it say? The keeper leans close. It says, Veritas sonat etiam in silentio. Truth sounds even in silence. The next toll is softer, almost human. You realize the sound isn't from the metal alone. The bell breathes. Each vibration carries a pulse, as if it possesses a heart. The keeper steps back. Tonight it tolls for a book, the Liber Lumen, the Book of Light. They declared it false this morning. It taught that divine creation was not command, but resonance. That words alone did not make the world, but vibration did. You whisper, and they erased it? They tried, the keeper says. But sound cannot be burned. Every time a priest chants, a syllable of that book returns. You watch as the bell begins to sway again. Its sound swells until the air itself feels liquid. You see flashes, the faces of monks, the flicker of candlelight, the pages of burned texts rising in smoke. When the sound fades, you realize tears are running down your cheeks, not from sorrow, but from awe. The bell has given you its memory, the weight of centuries condensed into one trembling heartbeat. The keeper closes their ledger. It's done, they whisper. Another silence recorded. You ask, why do you stay? They smile faintly. Because even silence deserves witness. You look up at the bell one last time. It no longer moves, but you swear you hear a faint hum still. Low, constant, eternal. The sound of truth remembering itself. As you walk away, the rain begins to slow. Dawn breaks over the city, pale and trembling. The bell does not ring again. But in the distance, the wind carries an aftertone, a note that refuses to fade. And somewhere, in the vast archives of heaven or history, a single word glows faintly in gold. Remember, you find the convent by accident, or perhaps it finds you. The road bends through cypress trees and ends before a wall of white stone, quiet and unassuming. Beyond it, the sound of chanting drifts through the air. Low, layered, otherworldly. You push open the gate. The garden inside is simple. Olive trees, a fountain, a path of worn tiles leading to a chapel. The scent of rosemary and smoke lingers. A few women in plain habits move silently among the herbs, tending to the soil as if it were scripture. One of them looks up when you approach. Her eyes are grey, sharp, alive. You shouldn't be here, she says, but not unkindly. The Vatican does not approve of visitors. I'm not here for approval, you reply. Her mouth lifts into a small smile. Then perhaps you belong. She leads you inside the chapel. The light here is strange. It feels solid, as though you could touch it. Candles burn in tall glass jars, their smoke curling like language. She gestures to the walls. Do you see them? At first, you see only faded frescoes. Saints, angels, familiar stories. But then you notice the subtle changes, the faces softer, the eyes gentler. Some of the figures wear robes that could be mistaken for those of goddesses. One holds a child, another a book, another a flame. These are not saints, the woman says. They are the ones who came before. The women erased from scripture. The healers, the midwives, the philosophers. The church canonized their names, but buried their knowledge. You walk closer. Beneath each painting, faint inscriptions run along the plaster. Not Latin, but something older, feminine in cadence. It's their writing, she says. The church painted over it centuries ago. But pigment remembers. She touches the wall, and the faint letters glow for a moment, revealing words. We kept the fire while they slept. She looks back at you. When they burned the manuscripts, we rewrote them in thread, embroidery, hymns, recipes, herbs. Every stitch, every measure hides a formula. She leads you down a narrow corridor into a room filled with looms and cloth. The air hums faintly with the scent of lavender and dust. On the tables lie tapestries, scenes that seem domestic at first glance but hold strange geometry woven into the background. Spirals, stars, coded words. Each pattern is a book, she says softly. Each thread, a sentence. They thought we prayed while we wove. In truth, we wrote. You pick up a piece of fabric. Its colors shift in the light. Hidden among the threads is an image. A serpent coiled around an open hand. A symbol of healing, she says. But to them, it was witchcraft. You ask, did the church ever find out? Sometimes, she replies. Those who were caught became saints. Those who weren't became myths. She opens a small chest and removes a folded piece of parchment. This, she says, was written by a nun named Aelia. She studied medicine in secret, centuries before they allowed women to read scripture. Her writings were burned, but one survived. You unfold it carefully. The handwriting is delicate, elegant. It describes the anatomy of the human heart, not as an organ, but as a temple of vibration, a mirror of divine rhythm. She believed, the woman says, that God was not in heaven, but pulsing behind our ribs. A flash of memory strikes. The alchemists, the translators, the monks, all speaking of vibration, resonance, light. You realize these women were part of the same chain, hidden beneath vows instead of titles. They called her heretic, she says, but her knowledge healed more than their prayers ever did. The sound of chanting grows louder outside. The other nuns have gathered in the courtyard, singing in a tongue that sounds almost like wind through water. You follow her there. The sky above glows with the deep blue of approaching dusk. They sing in the old dialect, she says. It has no word for sin, only for imbalance. The song swells. You feel it in your chest, not melody, but resonance, the vibration of countless forgotten voices harmonizing through time. She watches you closely. Do you hear it? That's their language, the language of the hidden women. They taught it to their daughters, who taught it to their daughters, who taught it to us. You close your eyes and listen. The sound becomes a river, carrying fragments of words. Mariam, Hypatia, Hildegard, Cassandra. Names erased from books, but alive in sound. When the song ends, the air feels lighter, cleansed. The woman turns to you. The church thinks we serve them, she says. We serve memory. You ask what happens if they are discovered. She smiles, serene. Then we vanish again. But not forever. You cannot kill what mothers the word. The bells in the distance begin to ring. Faint, mournful. The bell of erasure. She looks toward the horizon, then back at you. Another name gone, she whispers. Then we will sew it into the next cloth. You leave at twilight. The path winds back through the cypress trees. Behind you, the convent glows faintly, as if lit from within. The chanting rises once more, soft but unbroken. When you look back, you realize the sound has changed. It is no longer lamentation. It is instruction, an echo that teaches by staying. You walk into the dark with one thought pulsing in your chest, steady and luminous. They never stopped writing. They only changed their alphabet. You hear the hum before you see it, low, metallic, and alive. It pulses through the catacombs beneath Rome like a heartbeat trapped under stone. The air smells of oil and candle wax. You follow the sound through narrow tunnels, past frescoes of saints and angels whose eyes have long since turned to dust. The deeper you go, the more the hum grows. Steady, rhythmic, patient. It does not sound like prayer. It sounds like memory. You reach a heavy door of brass and iron, etched with symbols that do not belong to any known language. You press your hand to it. It is warm. The hum vibrates through your bones. Slowly, the door opens inward. The chamber is vast. Machines fill it. Strange, elegant, mechanical things that look half alive. Wheels turn without hands. Gears tick softly, synchronized like the beating of invisible wings. Shafts of light fall through cracks in the ceiling, illuminating glints of metal, mirrors, and glass. You step inside. The sound shifts slightly, adjusting to your presence. For a moment, you feel as if the room itself has noticed you. At the center stands a man. His robe is grey, his hair white as paper. He is winding a small device that looks like a cross made of copper and glass. When he speaks, his voice is soft and distant. I was beginning to think no one would come. You ask who he is. He smiles faintly. A custodian, he says. One of the last engineers of faith. He gestures around the room. These are the Machina Dei, the machines of God. They were built long before electricity, long before Rome was an empire of stone. The church kept them hidden because they blur the line between miracle and mechanism. You look closer at one of the machines. It resembles a rosary, but instead of beads, it has small crystal lenses. Each one glows faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the hum. What does it do? You ask. It prays, he says simply. He winds the crank again. The lenses spin slowly, refracting the light into patterns on the wall. Each rotation recites a psalm, he explains, but not in words, in resonance. It sends frequency into the air. The same way monks chant in unison, it's prayer translated into vibration. You stare as the patterns dance across the stone. Spirals, circles, stars. The light shifts with each note, as if the air itself bends in response. The church outlawed these centuries ago, he continues. They said it was witchcraft, that only the soul can pray. But tell me, is it heresy if metal remembers what the heart once sang? You touch one of the machines. It vibrates faintly beneath your fingers, humming like a sleeping creature. Who built them? He looks toward the ceiling. No one knows. Some say they were made by monks who studied geometry as scripture. Others say they came from Alexandria, smuggled before the fires reached the sea. I believe they were built by those who understood that creation itself is an engine. He moves to another device. Larger, more intricate. It resembles an organ fused with a clock. This one, he says, translates starlight into sound. When the planets align, it sings. He touches a lever, and the machine awakens. Notes spill out. Deep, haunting, endless. The air shimmers. You feel the vibrations in your lungs. It is not music. It is truth rendered audible. He closes his eyes. This was how they calculated divine motion. Before Galileo, before Copernicus, the church used it to time their rituals, to measure equinoxes, to predict eclipses. Then they called it heresy when others asked how it worked. The sound fades. The silence that follows feels sacred. He turns to you again. Every faith begins with wonder. Every religion ends with control. They buried these machines because they proved that divinity could be replicated, not by arrogance, but by understanding. You walk past rows of mechanisms, some broken, others still ticking faintly. You see designs of impossible precision, metal wings carved to mimic angels, mirrors arranged to bend light into perfect spheres, wheels that spin without motion. He stops before a final object, a small cube of brass. This one, he whispers, was found beneath the Sistine Chapel. No one knows what it does. It hums when you speak near it, as if it's listening. You kneel beside it and whisper, "What are you?" The cube vibrates. The hum deepens. For a moment, faint words form in the air, spoken not in sound, but in pressure. We remember. The custodian bows his head. "It speaks only when the silence is honest," he murmurs. You ask him why he stayed here. He looks at the machines, eyes bright with reverence. "Because faith is not belief," he says. "Faith is maintenance. Someone must keep the divine machinery running, even when the world forgets what it does." You hear footsteps above, faint, distant. He stiffens. "They know I'm still here. The Inquisition renamed themselves centuries ago, but their work never ended." He moves quickly to a lever near the wall. "Go," he says. "When they come, these machines must fall silent again." You hesitate. "What will you do?" He smiles faintly. "Wind them once more." You climb back through the tunnels. The hum fades behind you, swallowed by stone. When you emerge into the open air, Rome feels quieter. Too quiet. The bells toll in the distance, but for a moment, you hear another sound layered beneath them. A low, steady vibration. The heartbeat of the machines, still alive below. And you realize that faith has never truly been destroyed. It has only been rewired. You return to the monastery at dusk. The walls are cold, the corridors hollow. Only the faint sound of quills scratching breaks the stillness. Dozens of them, moving in rhythm, like rain falling in reverse. You follow the sound to the scriptorium. Candles flicker along the walls, their light trembling over rows of monks bent over parchment. None speak. Their faces are blank, their movements mechanical. The scratching is relentless, hundreds of quills moving at once, yet not a single breath of conversation. You whisper, "Why are they silent?" A voice answers softly behind you, "Because words have betrayed them." You turn. A figure stands in the shadows, cloaked in black. You cannot see their face, only the pale glint of their hands. "They write," the figure continues, "but not by will. The church calls it divine dictation. I call it captivity." You step closer. "Captivity?" "They are the silent order," the figure says, "scribes chosen for their obedience. They copy scripture until the self dissolves. They no longer think, only transcribe. They believe the hand writes truth, not the mind." You watch the monks closely. Their eyes move in unison, their breathing perfectly timed. One of them dips his quill into ink that glows faintly blue. The letters shimmer as he writes. "They use ink laced with silver dust," the figure whispers. "It conducts memory. Every word written here feeds into the archives below the Vatican. A river of text flowing backward into history." You shiver. "They are writing to be remembered." The figure shakes their head. "They are writing to erase. Each copied line replaces another, older one. It is how the church rewrites the past, not by fire, but by repetition." You step between the desks. None of the monks look up. Their faces are pale, drained of life, their lips moving silently in prayer. The air feels charged, electric. You pick up a discarded page. The handwriting is flawless, identical to every other page around it. No variation, no emotion, only precision. The letters seem to shimmer as you read them aloud. Suddenly, the air hums. The ink begins to fade. The letters vanish one by one, leaving the parchment blank. The cloaked figure watches. The words are self-erasing. The moment they are read by an unordained tongue, they disappear. You drop the page, heart racing. Why do they continue? Because silence has been mistaken for holiness, they say. They believe this is obedience, but what it truly is control. The church learned that the most efficient way to destroy a book is to make its copy perfect. You look again at the monks. One trembles slightly, his quill faltering. His ink drips onto the page, staining the parchment. You see, for the briefest instant, a word emerge beneath the script. Faint, hidden. Help. The ink swallows it again. You whisper to the cloaked figure, "Can they be freed?" "They would not know how to speak if they were," the figure replies. "Their tongues have forgotten sound." The bells toll outside, slow, deliberate. The monks all stop writing at once. They set their quills down in perfect unison and bow their heads. The silence thickens until even the air feels heavy. The figure walks forward and touches one of the parchment stacks. "Listen," they say. At first, you hear nothing. Then, faint, rhythmic, the pages are whispering, not in Latin, but in something older, syllables that sound like wind through stone. "They are not writing scripture anymore," the figure murmurs. "They are writing resistance. The ink remembers more than they know." You lean close. The whispering grows clearer. "We are still here," it says. "Ink remembers." The figure pulls back their hood. It is the woman from the hidden convent, older now, but her eyes still bright. "We taught them to write in shadow," she says. "Each line they copy carries a mirror beneath it. The church reads obedience, but beneath it, the world remembers rebellion." You ask, "And the ink that fades?" "It only hides," she says. "It becomes invisible under light, but returns when darkness falls." You look around. The monks begin writing again, their movements slower now, deliberate. The hum changes pitch, almost like music. "They know," she whispers. "Even in silence they resist." The candles burn lower. The scriptorium glows faintly blue from the ink's luminescence. The pages breathe in unison. You can feel it. The entire room alive with memory, with defiance disguised as devotion. The woman touches your arm. Do you hear it? That sound beneath their silence. That is history, rewriting itself. You close your eyes. Beneath the scratching of quills, you hear it. A faint, steady rhythm like a heartbeat. The sound of 1,000 lost voices breathing through ink. When you open your eyes again, the woman is gone. Only the monks remain, still writing, still silent. You leave the monastery. Outside, the air is cold and clean. The moon hangs low, bright as parchment. You hold one of their discarded pages to the light. It looks blank. But when you turn it toward the shadow, faint words appear, glowing like ghosts. The hand remembers what the tongue cannot say. You fold the page carefully and walk into the night. Behind you, the scriptorium hums softly, the sound of silence transforming. Not obedience now, but resurrection. The quills move faster, the ink brighter. The language of silence has learned how to speak again. You find it in a monastery that should not exist. High in the Apennine Mountains, hidden beneath the ruins of a Roman fortress, stands a single spire wrapped in mist. The locals do not speak of it. They say it is haunted by books that whisper in dreams. You climb through fog and silence until the door appears. Carved from black oak, marked by a single symbol, an open eye inside a circle of flame. When you push it open, the air that escapes smells of candle smoke and dusted parchment. The hall beyond is vast and unlit, save for a few candles trembling against the dark. You walk between rows of shelves that stretch higher than the eye can see. Books are chained in iron, their covers sealed with wax. Then you hear it, a low murmur like breathing through paper. The sound seems to follow you. At the far end of the hall, a single desk burns with a small lamp. An old man sits there, writing. His pen moves in long, deliberate strokes. He doesn't look up when you speak. "I'm looking for the Codex of Shadows." His hand pauses, just for a heartbeat. Then he dips his quill again. "You already hold it," he says quietly. You glance down at your hands, empty. He gestures toward your reflection in the ink pot. You lean closer and see it. Faint words moving across your reflection's skin, as if written by invisible fire. "The Codex," he says, "is not a book. It is a mirror. It writes itself in whoever seeks it." You feel a shiver crawl through your spine. What does it write? He finally looks up. His eyes are black as ink. Truth that has no permission to exist. He gestures toward the shelves. Every volume here is a transcription of one reader's shadow. When a man reads forbidden knowledge, it stains him. The Codex copies the stain. You reach for one of the chained books. Its surface is cold and soft, almost like skin. You open it. The pages are blank, at least at first. Then, slowly, words begin to appear, faint as breath. "I saw light behind the altar, and it spoke my name." You drop it. The old man smiles faintly. "It remembers what your eyes have hidden." The room grows darker. The candles burn lower. The air feels heavier now, filled with the sound of turning pages that you are not touching. Somewhere in the darkness, something moves. A flicker of shadow detaching itself from the wall. You whisper, "What are they?" "The echoes," he says. "Every reader leaves one behind. Their shadows become the librarians." The shape glides closer. It has no face, only the outline of one, blurred, trembling. When it speaks, its voice is made of layers, as though 1,000 whispers have learned to speak in unison. You opened the page. Now it opens you. You stumble back. The old man does not move. "Do not fear them," he says. "They are not demons. They are memory, clothed in darkness so it may survive the light." The shadow reaches for you. Its touch is cold, but not cruel. For a moment, your vision fills with images. Books burning, monks crying, ink boiling on the floor. Beneath it all, one sound repeats, a heartbeat made of words. You see your own face reflected in the flame of the lamp, but something else blinks inside it. Another you, made of sentences you never spoke. The old man whispers, "Every lie the church told became a page of the Codex. Every truth it killed became its ink." You turn to him. "Why keep it alive?" He smiles. "Because light forgets. Shadows remember." He rises, slow and shaking, and lifts the lamp. "Do you know why the Vatican fears this place?" he asks. "Because the Codex writes them too. Every decree, every silence, every name they erased. It appears here, whether they will it or not." The walls begin to shimmer. Words crawl across them like vines. You see names, dates, confessions, secrets. The air hums with language, alive and unstoppable. The old man hands you a small black quill. "Write one thing," he says. "Anything you believe must not be lost." Your hand trembles. You dip the quill into the ink. The shadow beside you leans close, whispering. You begin to write. Truth dies only when the last tongue forgets its taste. The ink glows faintly, then sinks into the page. The shadow sighs, a sound almost like gratitude. The old man closes the book and smiles. Now it will never be unwritten. As you leave, the shadows bow slightly. The mist outside has grown thicker, but the mountain hums faintly beneath your feet, as if carrying words through stone. When you look back, the monastery is gone. Only a single phrase remains, carved into the air like smoke. Every light leaves a shadow. Every shadow remembers the light. Rome is quiet tonight. Too quiet. You stand in the courtyard of St. Peter's Basilica, watching as the wind stirs the banners above the square. Pilgrims have long since gone. The bells are silent. The air smells of rain, incense, and secrets. You have come to meet him. The man they call the Whisperer, a priest, a spy, a ghost within the Vatican's archives. He is said to walk both worlds, the holy and the heretical. A door creaks open near the colonnade. A shadow gestures for you to follow. You step inside the narrow passage where candlelight flickers along the damp walls. The door closes behind you with a sigh. The man ahead moves quickly. His robes are black, simple, unadorned. You cannot see his face. "You shouldn't have come here," he says softly. "If they find us together, they will make us both disappear." You keep walking. "I was told you have something." He stops at the end of the corridor and turns. His eyes glint in the half-light. "Not something," he says. "Someone." He hands you a thin packet of papers, bound with a ribbon. The top page bears a single word, Requiem. You glance at it. "What is this?" "A confession," he says, "written by a man who once sat at the papal desk." The candlelight flickers across his face. He looks younger than you expected, no older than 40, but his eyes carry centuries. "I was trained by the Office of Doctrine," he says quietly. "They taught me to find the heretics, to catalogue the forbidden, to silence the voices that escape the fire. But I began to listen." He turns away. "You cannot serve the truth by burying it." You open the file. The handwriting is beautiful, looping, careful. It describes a network of monks who smuggled forbidden texts by disguising them as hymns. Psalms rewritten with hidden mathematics. Chants that carried scientific equations in their rhythm. He says, "They called it the Gospel of Echoes." I found fragments, enough to know it was real. He opens a small drawer in the wall and removes a thin disc of glass etched with tiny words. "They wrote their truths into sound," he says. Each note in the chant corresponded to a letter. Sing it right, and the text appears in the air. He holds the glass to the candlelight. You see faint symbols forming, spirals of letters that rearrange as the flame flickers. "They never stopped," he murmurs. "Even now, the Vatican's choirs unknowingly repeat coded hymns. The truth hides inside their voices." You ask, "Why tell me this?" He sighs. "Because I can't keep it anymore. They found out what I've seen. I've been followed for weeks. Soon they will erase me from their ledgers like the rest." The corridor grows colder. Somewhere above, the faint toll of the bell of erasure echoes. He looks up, jaw tight. "There, you hear it?" Another voice gone. You feel the tremor in the stone beneath your feet. He leans close. "I've hidden what I could. Documents, recordings, letters. They're encoded in the psalms sung every Sunday. The faithful chant without knowing they carry forbidden words on their tongues." He pauses, studying you. "You want to understand what the church fears. It isn't heresy, it's symmetry. Every lie they tell must mirror a truth. The closer you get to balance, the closer you come to blasphemy." A sound echoes behind you. Footsteps. He stiffens. The candle flickers violently. "They're here," he whispers. You both move quickly, ducking through a side passage. The corridor twists downward, lit only by thin lines of light leaking through cracks in the ceiling. You can hear the boots now, steady and patient. He stops before a door sealed with a cross of wax. "This leads to the choir vault," he says. "If I don't make it, take what's inside. It's the only proof left that the forbidden never stopped singing." You reach for the door, but he grabs your hand. "Promise me," he says. "If you live, tell them that faith built on silence is already dead." The footsteps grow closer. He pushes you through and slams the door behind you. Inside, the vault glows with soft golden light. Dozens of cylinders line the walls, old phonographs, each labeled with a psalm. You lift one, place it on the turntable, and crank the handle. The music that fills the room is unlike anything you've heard. Voices weave together in impossible harmony. Beneath the melody, faint syllables form, Latin words reversed, phrases hidden within the rhythm. You close your eyes and listen. The voices begin to shape images in your mind. Fires in courtyards, monks copying pages in the dark, women weaving songs into thread, a bell tolling beneath the earth. When the hymn ends, you hear a final whisper, not sung, but spoken. We are the voice that hides between prayers. You turn to the door. Silence. When you open it, the corridor is empty. The candle on the desk has burned down to wax and smoke. The papers are gone. So is he. Only one thing remains, a small scrap of parchment pinned to the wall with a knife. On it, written in blood-dark ink, are 5 words. Even God needs witnesses. You take it and leave. Outside, the square is empty, bathed in moonlight. The wind carries faint echoes of a choir singing in the distance. You recognize the melody, the same one from the vault, and beneath the music, so faint you could almost miss it, you hear another voice. His, whispering through the chant. Truth still walks the halls of faith. You close your eyes. The sound fades, but the words remain. Somewhere, inside the Vatican, someone is still listening. Someone is still writing. And for the first time, you realize the forbidden never needed paper to survive. It only needed breath. You arrive in Venice under a moon that glows like a coin tossed into still water. The city is quiet, draped in mist, the canals whispering as if they remember things they were not meant to carry. You follow a note left in a hollowed-out Bible, 2 lines written in ash. Find the stars they removed. Look beneath the clock that does not move. The path leads you to an old observatory near the edge of the lagoon, its dome cracked, its brass instruments green with age. When you step inside, the air tastes of rust and salt. The walls are lined with constellations that no longer exist. Names have been scraped off, stars blacked out by soot. In the center of the room stands a woman in a cloak the color of night. She holds a lantern that glows not with flame, but with starlight, soft, silver, trembling. When she speaks, her voice sounds like someone reciting from memory. They said the heavens declared the glory of God, she says. Then they erased half of them. You walk closer. Who erased them? She looks up. Her eyes gleam with the reflection of 1,000 invisible suns. The church, she whispers, when they learned that the stars move without permission. She leads you to a massive wooden table. Upon it lies a map of the sky drawn in ink so black it seems to absorb the light. Tiny holes are punctured through the paper, each one filled with powdered glass. Some shimmer, some remain dark. They changed the heavens, she says, not by moving the stars, but by rewriting the charts. They erased constellations that did not fit doctrine. They claimed the sky was perfect, immutable, centered on Earth. But the old astronomers saw motion, chaos, creation. You touch the map. The glass beneath your fingertips vibrates faintly, humming with unseen life. It's alive, you whisper. She nods. These are the stars they forbade. Each one sings in a frequency that disagreed with Rome. She takes your hand and guides it across the map. Here, she says, was the serpent of knowledge, cut from the heavens because it suggested wisdom came from the dark. And here, the crown of Sophia, erased because it crowned a woman with divine intelligence. She smiles faintly, but it is not joy. They called it purification, but what they really did was cage infinity. The air trembles. From somewhere above, the faint toll of a bell echoes through the dome. The lantern flickers. They know you're here, she says softly. The Vatican astronomers watch every telescope, every mirror that remembers. You glance at the instruments. The largest one, a great brass armillary sphere, begins to move on its own. The rings rotate slowly, aligning with invisible constellations. Light pours from the gaps between them, forming a spiral that floats in mid-air. She steps back. The map responds to presence. It knows when someone is willing to see. You stare at the spiral. Within it, stars connect to form symbols, letters, words, entire sentences. The light bends until it spells a phrase in Latin. Lux in motu veritas est. Truth is light in motion. They tried to stop the stars from moving, she whispers. But motion is creation. Stillness is death. That's why they feared Galileo, Bruno, Hypatia. Because they taught that God was not an unmoved mover, but a dancer. The spiral expands, filling the dome with stars that were never charted. You see shapes that do not exist in modern atlases. An open book, a flame, a child holding the sun. She closes her eyes. This is the forbidden sky. It maps not the heavens above, but the ones buried in the human mind. You ask, why hide it? She exhales slowly. Because every star is a question, and questions undo empires. The spiral begins to dim. One by one, the lights vanish until only a single star remains, a small point of gold pulsing faintly above your hand. It hovers for a moment, then sinks into your skin, warm and weightless. She looks at you. Now you carry it, the memory of the lost sky. When you dream, it will draw itself again. The bell tolls louder. The room trembles. Dust falls from the dome like dying snow. She grabs your shoulders. Go, she says. They will seal this place again before dawn. You turn to leave, but pause. Who are you? She smiles sadly. Once, I was their astronomer. Now, I am their heretic. You step out into the night. The mist closes behind you. Over the lagoon, the clouds shift. And for a brief moment, the stars appear. Unfamiliar, alive, whispering your name. You realize the church may have erased them from charts, but not from the sky. The forbidden constellations still burn. And tonight, for the first time in centuries, they are seen again. The Vatican halls echo with footsteps and whispers. You move through corridors lined with portraits of saints who look less like martyrs and more like judges. Candles flicker in their silver sconces, casting thin, trembling shadows that seem to listen. A guard leads you to a chamber beneath the apostolic palace. The door is carved with Latin words that feel more like a curse than a prayer. Veritas servit obedientiae. Truth serves obedience. Inside, the room smells of dust, parchment, and something faintly metallic, fear perhaps, or blood too old to stain. A long table dominates the center. At it sit 7 men, their faces hidden in the shadow of their hoods. Between them lies a single object, a cross made of iron and ink. One of them speaks. You have seen too much. His voice is soft, calm, precise, the kind that has learned how to turn mercy into weaponry. I have only seen what was hidden, you answer. He leans forward. And what do you believe that makes you? You hesitate. A witness. The others murmur, their voices low and indistinct. The leader continues. You've been in places forbidden. You've spoken to the archivists, the monks, the women. You've read the Codex of Shadows. I've listened, you correct softly. Listening is not a crime. It is, he says, when what you hear contradicts God. The silence that follows is thick. The torches on the wall hiss, as if they, too, are afraid to burn. You misunderstand us, he says after a pause. We do not destroy knowledge, we refine it. We separate divine truth from human error. And who decides which is which? The ones chosen to hear God's silence. Another hooded figure rises, holding a scroll sealed in black wax. This, he says, is your record. Every place you've gone, every word you've spoken, you have carried the disease of curiosity. You will confess, and be cleansed. He unrolls the parchment. Your name glows faintly, surrounded by Latin annotations written in crimson. It feels less like a record and more like an autopsy. You meet their gaze. You call it curiosity, you say. But it is faith. I only sought to understand how truth survives when you bury it. The leader's voice hardens. Faith does not seek. Faith obeys. You step closer to the table. No, obedience kneels. Faith stands. The words hang in the air like sparks waiting for breath. One of the hooded men slams his hand on the table. Blasphemy. Honesty, you whisper. They fall silent. The leader rises slowly. He picks up the iron cross and places it on the table between you. Do you know what this is? You shake your head. It was forged from the nails of condemned thinkers. They called it a relic of redemption. I call it an anchor. He leans close. It weighs down the mind until it stops asking questions. He presses it toward you. Kiss it, and you will live. You look at the cross. The iron hums faintly, alive with echoes of voices swallowed by its metal. For a moment, you think you hear Bruno's laughter, Galileo's whisper, Hypatia's breath. You step back. No. The room stills. The torches gutter, smoke curling toward the vaulted ceiling like black prayers. Another voice speaks, older, brittle. You refuse the church. You look at them all, their faces hidden, their hands folded like vultures at rest. I refuse to confuse silence with truth. They do not move. The leader finally exhales. Then you leave us no choice. He gestures. 2 guards enter. You are pulled backward, your feet scraping against the marble. But before they reach the door, something happens. A sound, soft at first, then rising. A hum, deep and resonant, filling the chamber. The torches flicker, their flames bending as though bowing to the sound. The scroll on the table begins to vibrate. Letters rearrange themselves, glowing faintly gold. The hooded men step back. The iron cross shivers, then cracks down the center. What is this? One of them hisses. You feel it, the vibration that has followed you since the catacombs, the same pulse you heard in the codex, the machines, the songs, the bell, the hum of truth awakening. The air ripples, the torches flare, the walls themselves seem to breathe, and in that moment you hear voices, not one, but many, layered, ancient, defiant. We remember. The leader covers his ears. Stop this! But the hum grows louder. The cross collapses into dust. The scroll bursts into flame, its letters scattering like fireflies. You step forward. You cannot erase resonance, you say softly. You can only drown in it. The guards freeze. The tribunal stares in horror as the sound fills every corner of the room. It is not destruction, it is release. When it finally stops, silence returns. But it is not their silence anymore. It is something vast, breathing, infinite. The hooded men are gone. Only ashes remain. You pick up a fragment of the iron cross. It hums faintly still, like a note waiting to resolve. As you climb the steps back to the surface, dawn breaks over Rome. The sky glows red, then gold. You look toward the horizon, where the forbidden stars are fading in the light. The bells of St. Peter's begin to ring. But beneath their familiar rhythm, you hear another tone, a low hum, steady, alive. The sound of thought unchained. And as the sunlight spills over the city, you realize that truth no longer hides. It moves. It sings. It breathes through everyone who dares to listen. It begins with a whisper. A syllable the air remembers, but the tongue does not. You hear it in a village at the edge of Sicily, where the stones are older than the Bible, and the sea speaks in voices that sound like vowels. The people here do not write their prayers, they sing them. Each note bends between words, between meanings, as though language itself were a living thing that refuses to stand still. An old woman finds you near the market. Her hair is white, her eyes the color of copper weathered by salt. She looks at you as if she's been waiting. "You came from the north," she says. "You carry Rome on your breath, but I know why you're here." You ask her how. She smiles faintly. "Because you listen before you speak." She leads you through narrow streets, past walls painted with symbols, eyes, spirals, hands. Some have been scratched out, others freshly drawn. "These marks," she says, "belong to the tongue they tried to kill." The air shifts as she speaks. Even her words feel layered, as if something ancient hides beneath the Italian. "Before the church brought Latin," she continues, "we spoke in tones. Our prayers were vibration, not sentence. We believed sound was the shape of the soul." You follow her into a courtyard, filled with pigeons and drying herbs. She opens a door to a small room. Inside, dozens of scrolls rest in glass jars. The air smells of wax, ink, and the sea. "These were buried," she whispers. "We found them in the bones of the catacombs, the language they erased." You pick up one of the scrolls. The script is fluid, spiraling across the page like music trapped in lines. You can't read it, but you feel it, the rhythm of something alive beneath the ink. "They called it lingua lucis," she says, "the language of light. It was how the ancients spoke before Babel fractured sound. It carried not only meaning, but energy. When you spoke it, the air itself responded." She places her hand over her chest. "The church feared it because prayer in that tongue needed no priest, no altar, no permission." You ask how it was lost. "They outlawed it first, then they translated it, poorly. Finally, they pretended it never existed. But words are stubborn things. They live in the cracks between sentences. They survive in lullabies." She gestures for you to sit. From a small chest, she removes a shell carved with the same spirals as the walls outside. "Listen," she says. She holds the shell to your ear. At first, you hear the sea, then something else. Faint, layered tones rising and falling, forming patterns too complex for any known tongue. You realize it's not music, it's speaking. "What is it saying?" you whisper. Her eyes gleam. "It says what all true languages say. Remember me." You ask her to teach you. She hesitates, then nods. "But know this, once you hear it fully, silence will never sound the same." She begins to hum, low and slow. The sound ripples through the room, vibrating the jars on the shelves. Dust swirls in the air like stars drawn to orbit. You feel the hum in your bones. She shapes her hands as she sings, each movement sculpting sound into form. When you try to mimic her, your voice trembles, raw and uncertain. But the air stirs. The candle flame beside you bends slightly toward your breath. She smiles. You see? It remembers. You practice until dusk. The words are strange, round, built on tone more than consonant. Every syllable feels alive, and every mistake feels like breaking something sacred. When the lesson ends, she leads you to the doorway. "The Vatican buried this language beneath Latin," she says. "They said it was pagan, dangerous, but they still use it." You frown. "How?" "In the Mass," she replies. "The cadence of Latin chants mimics its rhythm. Their priests still echo the music of what they condemned." The realization sends a chill through you. The church had not destroyed the language. It had hidden it in plain sight, dressed it in Latin robes. That night you dream of sound. Waves of light move through darkness, forming words that rise and fall like breathing. You wake before dawn, the syllables still echoing in your chest. When you return to the courtyard, the woman is gone. The The door hangs open, the shelves empty. Only the shell remains, lying on the table. You lift it. Inside, the sound continues, endless, patient. You hold it to your ear and hear one final word. Continue. And for the first time, you realize that every word the church silenced still hums beneath the surface of speech. Every prayer you've ever heard still carries the echo of that ancient, forbidden language, the tongue of light, hidden inside every human breath. The monastery is carved into a cliff above the Aegean Sea, unreachable by road. You arrive at dusk, ferried by a fisherman who will not speak your name aloud. When you ask why, he says only, "Because names make noise, and they live without it." You climb the narrow path until you reach the gates, two massive slabs of stone engraved with no symbols, no cross, just a single line cut through the center. Division, unity, both at once. A monk waits for you, his robe pale grey, his eyes dark and still. He gestures for you to follow, but says nothing. The corridors inside are carved from the mountain itself, smooth as bone. You hear the sea far below, pounding the cliff like a slow, eternal heartbeat. At last, you reach a chamber filled with light, soft, white, almost physical. It pours through an opening in the ceiling, striking a single object, a book resting on a pedestal of marble. Its cover is blank. The monk bows his head and steps aside. You approach the book. The air around it hums faintly, though you cannot tell if the sound comes from the stone, the sea, or your own pulse. When you open it, there are no words, only faint impressions, grooves pressed into the pages, as though the letters were removed, not written. "This is the gospel of silence," the monk says at last. His voice is quiet, but carries like thunder. It is the only text the church never dared to translate. You trace the empty lines with your fingers. There's nothing here. He shakes his head. There is everything. You are looking with the wrong sense. He touches the page. A vibration ripples through the room. The air seems to bend around the sound. You feel it in your chest rather than your ears. A language made of breath and pause, of intervals between being and meaning. "This gospel," he says, "was not written with ink. It was written with absence." You listen again. Each vibration feels like a heartbeat disguised as a word. "The monks who wrote this," he continues, "believed God's voice was silence itself, that every spoken word was a corruption of the divine stillness. They called it the first heresy of sound." You whisper, "Why hide it?" "Because it taught that no one needed intercession," he says. "If the divine speaks in silence, then prayer is listening, not asking. No priest, no scripture, just presence." He closes the book gently. "When the Vatican discovered it, they feared it would unmake the church. They buried it beneath the chapel of St. Agnes, where sound dies completely, but even silence leaks." He walks to the edge of the chamber and gestures toward a narrow slit in the wall. Beyond it, the sea roars against the cliff. "Do you hear it?" You nod. "That," he says, "is how silence survives. It hides in the noise of the world." You sit with him as the light shifts. Neither of you speaks for a long time. The hum of the sea fills the gaps between thought. Gradually, something changes. You begin to hear layers within the silence, tones too low to name, rhythms between the waves, breaths between your own. The monk smiles. "Now you are hearing what the book says." "What does it say?" He closes his eyes. "That the beginning was not the word. It was the waiting." The light fades as clouds pass over the sun. The chamber darkens, yet the air remains bright. You feel a deep peace, heavy and infinite. Then, faintly, another vibration. Different this time. Higher. A new tone joins the others, growing stronger. The monk's eyes open in alarm. "They've found it." The mountain trembles. Dust falls from the ceiling. You hear distant shouts echoing up the corridor, men speaking Latin, boots striking stone. The monk turns to you. You must take it. The gospel cannot be captured twice. You hesitate. But it's only silence. He smiles. Exactly. He presses the book into your hands. The moment you touch it, the vibrations stop. The world goes completely still. The air no longer hums. Even the sea falls silent. You can hear your heartbeat clearly, too clearly. The silence feels alive, thick, immense. Then it begins to move through you. You understand, suddenly, that this is not emptiness. It is fullness without shape. It is the space in which all sound, all truth, all faith begins. The monk bows once more. Go. Let them hear nothing. You run through the corridors. The shouts grow louder, closer, but you can no longer make out the words. Everything blends into one long, endless hush. You reach the cliff's edge. The sea below glows faintly in the moonlight, the color of breath made visible. You leap. For an instant, there is no falling, only stillness. The world dissolves into silence so complete it feels holy. The book in your arms vibrates once, faintly, as though sighing. Then the sound returns, not as noise, but as song. You break the surface, gasping. The waves crash, the wind roars, the bells of distant Rome toll. And within that noise, you hear it. The echo of the gospel still singing inside your pulse. The monk was right. Silence was never absence. It was language waiting to be remembered. And as the sea carries you away, you realize that the most dangerous truth the church ever hid was not in words at all. It was the one thing beyond them, the sound beneath sound. The pause between creation and command, the living stillness where God breathes. Don't forget to follow, so you never miss the next hidden chapter, where truth, mystery, and forbidden history come alive again.